Welcome to Hurt at Work, a Kentucky workers' comp podcast. Today, Louisville workers' compensation attorney Scott Scheynost is going to provide helpful information, tips, and advice for injured workers and their families. Scott's goal is to help you to maximize the benefits you receive. If working's got you hurting, sit back and listen to Scott address topics that matter to you. Well, welcome back. We've got Scott Scheynost in the studio today, and we're going to do another podcast. This one's going to be a little bit more relevant, though, for our time. Today, we're going to talk about social distancing and its impact on your workers' comp claim. Scott, welcome back, buddy.
Good to be here again, and I want everybody to know that we're at least 6 feet apart right now.
At least.
Yeah.
But, with the coronavirus, the COVID-19 situation here is changing a lot of things. But, when it comes to the law, when it comes to workers' comp claims, you've been handling things at a distance for quite a while anyway, especially with an out-of-state. Let's start with this and then get really, really specific on the coronavirus issues. But you handled out-of-state cases as part of Kentucky workers' comp claims.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. Originally, we were going to talk about handling out-of-state workers' compensation claims, but that also applies to the guidelines we've recently been given for social distancing, and I think a lot of people that may have a workers' compensation claim and they want to proceed with it right now might be hesitant to do that because at the current time, if hopefully somebody hears this down the road and wonders what we're talking about, but at the current time, our government has asked us to commit to social distancing to try to prevent as much in-person contact as possible. Right now, this is March, we're in the middle of the coronavirus situation, and I think a lot of people still have workers' comp claims they want to proceed with, and they're wondering how to do that. And really, it can still be done. As a matter of fact, we've been doing that for several months, if not years. The government's asked us to commit to social distancing. You can still proceed with your workers' compensation claim and be socially distant at the same time.
Well, and there are a lot of these situations don't really require your client to be even in state. I mean, you've got cases right now with people in Georgia. You've got people down in Franklin, Kentucky.
Correct.
You've got people all over the place. We like to say Pikeville to Paducah.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. We've handled cases all over the state. Originally, I think we were going to talk about maybe truck drivers who may be injured in Texas for
delivery drivers right now.
Right, that was based out of Kentucky. That can be a workers' comp claim. But almost everything that we do can be done in a socially distant manner. For instance, most people will find me on the internet, or they'll get my name from another attorney and they'll give me a call. It doesn't have to be in person. From that call, we can get most of the information we need to go ahead and get started on your case. I usually ask folks to fill out a questionnaire. I've emailed that questionnaire to probably 4 or 5 people in the last week. We always do that anyhow. But, you get that questionnaire. One person's already returned it to me through email. From that questionnaire, we get most of the information that we need to go ahead and proceed with your workers' comp claim. There's other stuff that has to be done, but that gives us the information, addresses, parties involved, doctors you've seen, your history. I can look at that and really tell you what's going to happen with your workers' compensation claim, to be honest with you, once I've seen that. So once we talk and meet, I can get you to fill out a lot of forms. Those questionnaires can be emailed to you. They can be mailed to you.
Faxed if you need to.
Faxed. I have not done it yet, but it can be done by text. So we can get that to you. And even if you can't get the questionnaire, we can talk on the phone and get most of the information we need. At some point in time, we're probably going to have you sign some forms. We can, again, send those forms to you by fax, mail, email, text. You'll have to sign those. Some of these forms are required to be signed by a notary. That's the tricky part right now, but as I understand it, Kentucky Secretary of State's allowing notaries to sign these remotely too. And,
well, you know what's interesting? This is just talking anecdotally. I have a UPS store almost right across the street from my office, and they always have somebody on staff there who's a notary.
That's true.
I mean, they do that. So there are all different ways. If you have a bank that's open,
that's
a lot of
normally
times
what I tell folks to do if they need something notarized is go to their bank. If you bank at someplace regularly, and they know you there, there's almost always a notary at the bank because they need one too. And if they know you and they know you're a customer, they normally don't charge you for signing something. So that's the easiest way is going to your bank. But again, I think we're going to a new age with how some of this stuff's done. There's some new regulations that are being issued regarding how things are notarized. I think here in the next couple of days we'll have all that stuff down pat, and we will be able to notarize things remotely. So what this means is basically we can get started on your workers' comp claim. We can get the documents going that we need. We can get this thing up and running without you even having to come to the office.
Well, and realistically, the first step is trying to get you the medical care that you need. You've been
Right.
injured. I mean,
Right.
that's really what started this whole thing. You've been injured. Hospitals, clinics, they're still open. But again, you're going to go there anyway. Let's go ahead and just make sure
Right.
that the system is helping you.
Even
take care of it.
doctors, I shouldn't talk about my mom, but she saw her doctor over the phone
Yeah.
2 days ago.
Yeah.
And there's web services that do this. Even doctors are starting to handle things remotely. And most of the time when you're going to a doctor, they're not usually going to do something that requires hands-on treatment. They're finding out what you need, if you need to go to some kind of other treatment, if you need some kind of medicine.
It's a consultation.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of that stuff can even be done over the phone. Probably most of my clients, they're seeing a doctor, they're wanting to see how they're doing, and they give them a prescription. Again, all that stuff can be done over the phone too. We're in the middle of this thing right now, and some medical treatment like physical therapy and elective procedures have been delayed because of it. And that's actually had an impact on workers' compensation claims because most people get money until they reach maximum medical improvement. And then at point maximum medical improvement stops, the temporary total disability benefits stop. So what we're going through right now is actually they delayed people getting to the point of maximum medical improvement because they can't get the physical therapy they need, or they can't get the elective procedure like a knee replacement or back surgery, that kind of stuff. So what's going on right now is basically their claims are being put on hold, but they're still eligible for benefits while this happens.
Which means you still have money coming in. You're still able to pay those bills.
Yeah. A lot of times we're dealing with doctors and adjusters and folks trying to get some kind of medical treatment. All that stuff we're already doing remotely.
Yeah.
I email and talk to adjusters every day. I can't remember the last time I actually saw an adjuster in person. It's probably been 2 or 3 years. So, all that stuff's already being done remotely. When you actually see a doctor again, we might need an independent medical examination. That's probably something that needs to be done in person. I have seen written reports based on just medical records, so they can actually be done without seeing somebody. But I think there needs to be some kind of personal contact, and maybe it can be done over the phone. We might start organizing it that way. But that usually comes at the end of a case anyhow.
Right.
Usually after somebody's concluded all their medical treatment and we realize we're not going to be able to resolve this claim through a settlement. So that seems to be the biggest hang up right now in resolving a claim, is how are we going to get these IMEs, independent medical examinations, done when they're not going to be in person. But again, that usually only applies after your claim's already been going on for a year or so, okay? And that's usually part of the litigation process, and a lot of claims don't ever get to the point where we got to litigate them. A lot of them we get settled. So sometimes we don't even need an IME. I think the bottom line, though, is if you're wondering, can I get going with my workers' compensation claim right now, even though, the governor's asked us to commit to social distancing, not to go to certain places? Well, the answer is yes. And quite honestly, it's really not much different than it was before all this stuff happened.
No.
I mean, you're going to call me up on the phone. I'm going to try to send you an email, mail you something. I like to meet my clients so they can look at me and realize, they probably got the ugliest workers' compensation attorney in Kentucky. And, that way they're used to it and they don't get shocked when we meet later on. But seriously, it's nice to meet folks and you just get a lot more in-person information that way. We'll still do that. We'll get that done. If we have to have a meeting, we'll get it set up to where it's just one-on-one. That hasn't been prevented yet. I don't think that's ever going to be prevented. People need their workers' comp benefits just like they need groceries. You got to have money coming in to pay stuff and take care of your family. So they're not going to shut down the workers' compensation system. And, if you're waiting to get your claim going, don't wait. Call me and we'll get going on it.
Yeah.
We've done some things differently at the office in the middle of all this stuff. We've got limited staff there. We generally have somebody there at the office, though. And if you're going to come in for some reason, you have to come in. We like to have you call us to contact us to make sure, everything's set up and it minimizes contacts with other clients. It's not been prevented by the government yet. We can still have in-person meetings, but we try to make that as efficient and as, appropriate as possible. Minimize contact with other clients, minimize contact with staff, so we can still do all this stuff. But basically, everything we do in a workers' compensation claim, 95% of it's not done with you there. We do a lot of things people don't realize we're doing, getting medical records, reviewing them, talking to doctors, A lot of times clients don't even know that's going on. That's still going to go on. Even though I've got some of my staff working remotely, we have our files that are backed up into the cloud. We're able to work at home. It's a little bit slower. It's a little bit harder to get stuff out, but we're getting it done, and we're getting more efficient at this all the time. But if you've got a workers' compensation claim, don't hesitate to call us. We can still get this thing done. You probably won't know much of a difference between how we're handling it now and how we did it before. Probably the biggest thing is the in-person contact. But just this week, I've started a couple of cases with folks over the phone and email, and some of those have statute problems that we got to get going on, and we should be able to handle all that stuff. So there's really no reason to delay your workers' compensation claim. And who knows, this may be the best time to get going on it, because a lot of people on the other side, adjusters and even other attorneys, they're working from home too, and they may be looking for that document to come through. They may actually be able to give it a little bit more attention.
Well, exactly. You mentioned statute issues, and you're talking about a statute limitation for somebody who's just tuning in. Can you explain that real quickly?
Sure. There's a limit. There's a time limit for any kind of a legal action that you have to file, and it varies from state to state. For a workers' compensation claim in Kentucky, you've got 2 years from the date of the injury or the last date they paid temporary total disability benefits, whichever is later, for a traumatic injury to file a claim in Kentucky. The governor has asked people to do social distancing, but the government has not prevented the statute of limitations from running.
Right.
So even though we have these social distancing requirements out there, even though people are trying to minimize in-person contact, even though actually right now as we're talking, the Department of Workers' Claims has suspended hearings and benefit review conferences where we make decisions about the final workers' compensation matter. And courts have been closed. You can't go to court and have a trial right now, as I understand it.
But that just means your benefits checks are going to keep coming.
If you've got it started, right.
If you have it started.
Yeah, but the statute of limitations, though, has not been delayed. If you've got a 2-year statute of limitations, you still have a 2-year statute of limitations.
Which means you have to file the claim. Basically, you need to file it. You don't have to have it resolved,
right?
But you have to start the process officially.
Right now, and this may change, but I doubt if it will. If you've got a 2-year statute of limitations and there's a rule preventing you from having social contact, you still have to file that claim within 2 years. You're going to lose your claim. You can't sit back and wait for all this to be over. Yeah,
so there is a reason to do that. And I noticed last night when Governor Beshear issued more of a stringent closing down of businesses, all non-life sustaining, there was a carve-out, a set-aside, if you will, for professional services, and law firms are included in that. So law firms are still operating. They're just doing it a little differently.
Correct. They've asked us to minimize stuff, and we have as far as physical contact, but we're still open. We're still able to do business. And when you think about it, the legal system, that has a lot of bearing on how people get their benefits and keep their life going. So it makes sense to keep it open. We can't put everything on hold. And again, a lot of stuff we do, I think even Governor Beshear said this, 95%, he was an attorney, 95% of what an attorney does can be probably done at home. It's just that in-personal contact. And, I miss it. Everybody does miss it. You get a lot more information when you're sitting across from the table from somebody than when you're not. I'm not a poker player, but, poker players like to see what the other person is and the tells and all that kind of stuff. So you get more information when somebody's there, but at the same time, we can still get this thing going. I don't think it will really have a big impact on folks handling their workers' compensation claims, other than maybe delaying a final resolution as the Department of Workers' Claims works through some stuff. Even the department's starting to do things differently. We take depositions in workers' compensation claims, and that's like a conference between the attorneys and the claimant where they ask them questions. These are all under oath. There's a court reporter there that types it up. That's almost always done in the past. They have had some rules where they can be done telephonically. They've just issued some new rules on that. We can actually have 2 different attorneys in 2 different places, the deponent, the person talking and being asked questions in a different place, and the court reporter in another place. So we can get 4 people together over a couple of different systems and do these remotely. Hearings done at the Department of Workers' Claims, they've toyed with having those done remotely too before, where the claimant, the person asking for benefits, is in one location and the judge is in another. That's happened before on kind of a trial basis. I got a feeling that's going to be a lot more prominent And who knows, maybe the way we do stuff here in the future.
Well, and I think with the advent of video technology, I mean, a lot of that, you're going to see more and more video involved in the practice of law, whether that's attorney to client communication, whether that's attorney to attorney communication, attorney to judge communication. I mean, all of that is evolving quickly.
Right. And the use of paper has decreased dramatically in the Department of Workers' Claims. Everything's filed electronically now. It's been that way for about the last year and a half. And what that means is there's even less reason to have you come into the office to sign something, because we're probably just going to go ahead and file it over the internet. But the system is really already set up to do all this stuff remotely. When we exchange information with claims adjusters and other attorneys, a lot of times we'll do that over the internet. We were talking earlier with Trevor Smith, who does some Social Security disability claims, and we were talking about how somebody might come in and I might represent him in a workers' comp claim, and he might represent him in a Social Security disability claim, and I've got all their medical records, and once they give me permission to give those, I can give those to Trevor. Well, we don't copy those anymore.
Right. It's a scan. It's an email.
What happens, our office is entirely electronic, so when we get a record, if it's not already electronic, we make it electronic, and we just send that file to Trevor over the internet. He gets it in 10 seconds. We don't have to copy things, mail it, wait for him to get it 3 days later. And almost everything's been done that way. Not quite everything, but almost everything will be done that way after all this is over. I think that's going to be an even bigger push. So the system's already built to handle the social distancing in a workers' comp claim. The only three things that really are important that have to have in-person contact is your meeting with the attorney that's going to represent you, the independent medical examinations that occur where doctors talk about whether or not you're disabled or the percentage of disability, and the hearing. We can do a lot of that stuff over video now. We do a lot of this stuff remotely already. We can delay some of this stuff too and get most of the other things in your case done if it needs to be done in person. So everything else basically is already done over the internet. There's no reason to delay in getting your case going. We can get all the information we need from you. We can get all the information we need from medical providers. Actually, most of the medical records we get are done through internet requests now too. We have to have you sign waivers to do that, and once we do that, we upload those. And for instance, Norton gets the upload, and he gives us access to the records we're trying to request, and then we get those, and we've got what we need.
Right.
It still takes 6 weeks to get it all done.
Yeah.
But it's done remotely now. So
and it's not a quick process anyway.
No,
it never has been. I guess getting the claim started can be quicker, and getting your coverage can be quicker, but the resolution typically is going to take a while anyway.
Yeah, and really, one of the things we need in a case are your medical records. I can't figure out where your case is going till I see what the doctors have said, diagnosed, planned on doing, and sometimes you got competing doctors that say different things. So, we've got to get the doctor's records, and a lot of times the doctors will give you a real short summary, and they've got 15 pages of medical records that need to be reviewed. So we've got to get your medical records before we can do anything. That's a fairly time-consuming process because of the system. You don't want your medical records going to somebody that doesn't want them, doesn't need them. So we've got to get waivers signed, send those in, get access. And in the current environment, medical records are probably not the biggest priority for the medical providers. I got a feeling they're probably going to shift resources from the medical records department to other places. So we've always encountered delays. Here in the last couple of years, a lot of delays have been caused because the medical providers are shifting from a hard document, paper-based medical record system to an electronic-based record system. And I got a feeling, again, they're not going to put a big emphasis on the medical records while all the other stuff's going on, and they might be needing beds for ventilators and stuff like that. So I have a feeling medical records are probably going to be harder to get. We'll eventually get them. But if anything, that's just another reason to get your case going now. If you're going to have a 6-week delay in getting your records, well, if you wait 6 weeks to get your records and it takes another 6 weeks, that's 12. If you call us now, it's maybe 7. So if anything, that's probably another incentive to get going on your case.
Right. And I figure if you've been injured on the job, maybe you can't go back to work right now and you're sitting at home. I mean, there's a chance that you're going to heal, you're going to feel better. So by the time you actually get your case started, if you've decided to wait, your condition has changed. And so what you actually put in these legal documents, in these court documents, they've got to be accurate and they've got to be truthful So again, yeah, you already went through all that pain from the initial standpoint. So why wait to the very end when you're feeling better to talk about how sore you are, which is obviously less sore than you were when the injury actually occurred?
Well, and what I found with most of my clients, to be honest with you, and it's just natural, is people forget things.
Yeah.
And they forget doctors they've been to. They forget things that have happened. And you know, they tell me one thing, and I'll find out that they've been to 3 other doctors because they just forgot about it. You know, it's just natural. You need to see somebody to get all this information down now as opposed to later. You know, it just doesn't hurt. I think the bottom line is go ahead and get going on your case. We can go ahead and get it up to speed. I think you would really not notice much of a difference now with the things that are going on with social distancing as opposed to when social distancing wasn't occurring. It really hasn't had much of an impact on what we do. There are probably going to be a couple things that are impacted, like I said, medical records and maybe some delays on final hearings and independent medical examinations. But again, a lot of that stuff comes later on, and hopefully this whole system will be back up running and better in the future, and there's no reason to delay. All this stuff, you know, really, when we originally talked about this, we were thinking about discussing cases that occur out of state of Kentucky and whether or not somebody in Texas could call me and get their case going. Well, that's really that's really the same thing. If you're hurt out of state, all this stuff applies to you. That's what we were originally going to discuss, I think, is if somebody got hurt in another state, whether or not they could proceed with a Kentucky workers' compensation claim. Well, everything we've just discussed also applies in that situation too.
Well, exactly.
If you're a trucker and you're driving in Texas and you know you've got a connection to Kentucky that allows you to have a workers' comp claim, you know, you may have come to Kentucky, been hired, and never have gone to Kentucky again as you delivered stuff for this company. You get injured in Texas, which, as I understand it, has a horrible workers' comp system.
Much like Indiana.
Yeah, Indiana's not better than Texas, but not as good as Kentucky. As I understand, and I'm not admitted to practice in Texas, I really don't know what the system is. I've just heard anecdotally that it's not a really good system. But, you know, you may have a Kentucky workers' compensation claim. There's certain requirements that have to be met. I'm not going to bore everybody with it, but essentially if you were hired here or you're based out of Kentucky, even though you were injured somewhere else, you may have a Kentucky claim. And you could also have a claim in the state where you were injured. For instance, if you were hired in Kentucky and you drove all over the country and got injured in Texas, you could have both a Kentucky and a Texas claim. You could actually choose which one. Sometimes you can actually proceed with both of them. In those situations, you know, you may not be planning on coming to Kentucky for another 6 months, years, or ever. The things we were talking about, social distancing, also apply in your case. We can get going on your case. We can get the forms going. I can investigate it. I can still obtain your medical records from Texas if that's where you were treated at, just like I can from Kentucky. I've handled those kind of cases before. I've got a couple going on right now where people live in other states. And Kentucky is a long state. It's a long distance between Paducah and Pikeville. It's about a 7-hour drive, and I got people to both ends of the state right now. So we can still handle those cases even if you're from out of state. The same thing applies in an out-of-state case as a Kentucky state case. We handle these on a contingency fee basis, so it doesn't hurt to call me about it. I'm not going to charge you to talk to you about your case. I can tell you what the benefits are in Kentucky, and you can turn around and call somebody in Texas and find out what the benefits are in Texas and figure out what you want to do. But the fact that you're out of state doesn't prevent us from handling it.
And to be clear, we're not picking on Texas. It's just when you're based in Louisville, Kentucky, that seems an awful far away.
Yeah.
This could be Kansas. This could be Montana. This could be anywhere.
That's
this could
true
be
too.
East Coast. It doesn't matter. We just kind of focused on Texas there for a little bit, but it's an example.
Texas is a big state, and it came to mind. And
absolutely.
Don't want to pick on Texas at all. But and I've handled cases that people have actually lived in New Zealand, for instance.
Wow.
And they've gotten hurt, I think, in Oklahoma. But it was for a company that was based out of Kentucky, and they left the United States and gone out of the country. Get some interesting situations about getting their money when the case is over.
Yeah, exactly. What denomination? So.
Well, we had to wire stuff, but you know, even that can be done, and we've handled those cases at the beginning of the age of the internet, and that was a big eye-opening process for us to see that this stuff could be done that way, and probably is more efficient when you do it that way. But the bottom line is, even if you're hurt in another state, if you think you've got some nexus to an injury in Kentucky, give me a call. I'm happy to talk to you. We can compare what the law is in Kentucky. You'll have to contact somebody in the particular state where you're injured in to talk to about that state. But in general, my experience has been most people seem to prefer Kentucky workers' compensation claims over the claims in surrounding states. There's one or two states here that probably have maybe a little bit better, but better workers' compensation systems because for different reasons. But for most of the Kentucky surrounding states, Kentucky workers' compensation benefits I think are better in both the amount of money you can get and the benefits you can get and things like that. So if you're hurting another state, you think you may have a nexus to a Kentucky claim, give us a call. We'll be happy to talk to you about that. It doesn't cost anything. If you're in one of the states where the benefits are better, you've wasted a phone call. So I don't think it hurts you to give us a buzz.
Absolutely. Scott, what's that phone number? What's the office phone number for them?
My telephone number at the office is 502-937-5287. We are currently in the office with a limited staff, but even when somebody is not in the office, that of course goes to voicemail, and I get emails with the voicemails, so I monitor I monitor those calls even when I'm out of the office, basically during the day when I'm awake. So if you call on a Saturday at 6 o'clock, I'll probably find out about that. As long as my wife doesn't have me doing something, I'll try to give you a call back. But, we also have the website, ScheynostLaw.com. I've got to spell Scheynost for you, SCHEYNOSTLAW.com. You can contact us that way. And then my email is sscheynost@ScheynostLaw.com. You can send me an email. I am trying to become better at texting. I don't know how we can do it with like an office text number. My cell phone number, I don't mind giving my cell phone number out for that purpose, or even if you want to call it, I don't mind that. My cell phone's 502-445-4348. And what I found, I'm an older guy. You can't see how ugly I am and how much gray I got in my beard. But texting is something I'm learning how to do a little bit more. And I have found most people want to text now. They don't want me to call them.
Yeah, it's easier.
It's easier. It's taken a while for me. I grew up in an age where faxes were a wonderful thing, and some people I was working with didn't like faxes or computers. So texting is what everybody's doing now. I'm trying to become very proficient in it and better at it, and trying to text people more. It's hard for me to answer the phone at my office, answer my cell phone and email, and read a fax at the same time, but I'm trying to get better at it. So,
and the easiest way is probably just to pick up the phone, make the initial call to the office, and then figure it out from there. Everybody's case is different. Everybody's situation is different.
That's true, too. But if you want to do the text thing, I don't have a problem with that. Text me, and we will get back with you on that, too.
And Scott, you had mentioned a contingency fee basis earlier. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know anytime we mention contingency fee, it's a good idea to kind of let people know, what does that really mean?
Right. That's important. Everybody wants to know how they pay the attorney. And on workers' compensation claims, we normally handle those, we always handle those on a contingency fee. That means you don't pay me anything unless I get money for you. My fee is contingent on you recovering something. So if you have a case and you have questions about it and call me up, I'm not going to charge you for that. If you have a case and we represent you and we lose, I'm not going to charge you an attorney fee for that. There are some other costs involved, expenses and
court costs. And some other things.
That's separate from the attorney fee. But those are usually minimal compared to the attorney fee. It depends on what the situation is. But as far as the attorney fee, that is a contingency fee. That means if you call me up and we represent you and you don't get any money, I'm not going to charge you a fee for that.
So it's probably in your best interest. Just pick up the phone and engage with Scott. Yeah, exactly. A lot of people worry, because maybe they've been through a divorce or maybe they've been in a different criminal action where you're paying an hourly or a flat fee or something.
Yeah.
It's workers' comp is handled differently.
Yeah, you don't have to pay me a retainer. You don't have to pay me hourly. Just give us a call. I'll be happy to explain that to you. Now, the next question folks ask is, what is the fee? Even though it's contingent, what is the fee? Well, fees for workers' compensation claims in Kentucky are limited by statute. The current law says I can never charge a fee more than $18,000. We recently settled a case that's well over six figures. My fee can be no more than $18,000. Okay, the fee is essentially 20% of the first $25,000, 15% of the next $25,000, and 10% of the remaining part, up to a limit of $18,000. So my fee can never be more than 20%. My fee can never be more than $18,000, and it's kind of a sliding scale, but that's what you need to remember: never more than 20%, never more than $18,000.
So a normal automobile accident, a car wreck lawyer is probably going to charge at least 33%, maybe 40%, depending on what it is, and it can go higher if it goes to litigation.
Some charge more. They can charge you whatever's reasonable,
Yeah.
and it could be 75% in the right situation. But fees and workers' compensation are limited by statute. They have to be approved by an administrative law judge at the end of the case. There's a specific statute that limits what we can charge. We follow that statute. I'm happy to explain that to anybody. There are expenses that incurred. That's another subject. We talk about that later on. Generally, expenses in a workers' comp claim are going to be $1,000 to $1,500. I've got some other cases that have been more than that, but there's been a lot more cases when it's been a lot less than that too.
Yeah.
So that's another subject that we can talk if you have some questions about it. It's kind of hard to discuss in this situation because everybody's expenses depends on their particular circumstance. But the fee, which is usually the biggest thing, again, that's limited by statute, no more than 20%, no more than $18,000.
Perfect. Scott, buddy, I really appreciate your time. I know this the whole coronavirus thing is really throwing everybody for a loop.
It's a new world.
It is a new world, and it's good to know the system is still there to support workers, especially if they've been injured. And this also applies to executives. I mean, you can have executives who are injured at the office or traveling for business or whatever. I mean, it's not just for the guy working on the line or driving the truck.
Yeah, if you're at home working on a computer, pick it up and drop it on your foot and break it. Guess what? It's still a workers' comp claim.
Still a comp claim.
Yeah, we've actually gotten a few of those kind of float in, but. Most people working at home that have a computer drop on them aren't going to be hurt like a pallet full of parts falling on them at a warehouse. But there are some interesting situations. When are you at work? When are you at home? That's another podcast.
That sounds like a great new episode. So we'll put that in the queue.
But I think the bottom line on that, though, if you have a question about the injury, give us a call. Again, it's a contingency fee. I'm not going to charge you anything to talk about it. I can bore you with all the details when you call, but you'll find out whether or not you have a decent case or whether or not it's been pursued, I think, in a phone call that's going to be free to you. Yeah,
and regardless of where we are with social distancing, Scott's still working. So by all means, pick up the phone, check him out online there, and we'll get it. Scott will get it taken care of for you. So, hey, Scott, thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it, guy. I hope this episode was informative to everybody listening. You can subscribe to this podcast, by the way. And if you're new to podcasting, a subscription does not mean you're paying anything. That just means you'll receive a notification every time a new episode has been published. So you can always go to ScheynostLaw.com, and you'll be able to find the podcast page, and all of these episodes are uploaded there. You can go over to the Facebook page. It's there. It's also on Apple Podcasts, which is iTunes, and Google Podcasts, and all these other platforms out there.
Yeah, I just want to say I hope everybody's enjoying this, and if you have listened to this podcast, I would appreciate it if you could send me an email. Give me your thoughts on it. Do I need to talk faster, slower, or did I give you some good information?
Is there a topic you might want to know about?
Exactly. I mean, if somebody's listening out there, I'm happy to talk to you, and if you want some more information, we're happy to give it. So it's free advice. Use it while you can.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode. Guys, I once again, thanks for listening, and everybody stay safe, stay healthy out there, and we're going to get through this. Thanks for listening to this episode of Hurt at Work. Scott will be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. For more information, be sure to visit ScheynostLaw.com. That's SCHEYNOST law.com. You can also follow Scott's Workers' Comp office on Facebook. Until next time, be safe and remember, Scott's ready to help, especially when you and your family need it the most.